What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Tribe of Visionaries podcast. I'm Jason Merritt. I'm your host, joined by my co-host, Paul Birmingham. We have a very special guest today, Austin Marvell. Austin, what's up,
Hey,
we call him the Captain America of Austin.
Yeah, just like his name, he's full of adventure and fun. So
that's right.
I always envy you, man. I see you traveling all over the place, taking awesome photography, beautiful pictures of all the great things you're doing and seeing. So I'm really excited about this show today to figure out some more information about you and obviously see what great things you have going on right now.
Yeah. Hey, guys, listen, I really appreciate the opportunity. I know that you guys have an awesome audience and you bring amazing value because I've sat down with each of you. You know, we've caught brunch, we've had one-on-ones, and I know how much value you bring to everybody that gets to spend some time around you guys. So I just really appreciate you bringing me into the audience. Hopefully I don't mess it up.
I appreciate you, man. It's always a pleasure to be around you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Austin. Like, how did you get into real estate and kind of what do you have going on in real estate right now?
Yeah, cool. So again, my name is Austin Marvell. Most of my friends, they just have grown up being called by my last name, which I obviously have to raise the bar and live up to it because Marvel Comics, they just keep making these movies better and better. Like the superpowers get more impressive and unobtainable. So I got big shoes to fill. I grew up out in Washington State, the Pacific Northwest. So adventure has always been kind of in my blood, going hiking, fishing with my dad, my brothers, camping out, just all over the place. So naturally that led, I went to college in Portland, Oregon, and then to Spokane, Washington. And both of those roles had like a travel and tourism. So I was a tour guide on a jet boat. And then that led to this company called Epic Adventures, where we did just that. We'd take kids like dog sledding. I taught a lot of Brazilians and Portuguese and sororities, people, just random groups of people how to snowboard and navigate down a mountain, dog sledding. I mean, all the things, whitewater rafting. So travel just was always it was happening. It was inevitable. I had no control over that part of my life, but I was the only one in that program in college that was getting a business and marketing degree. Everyone else was outdoor recreation, wildlife management, but I was interested in running businesses and making money. So that's kind of how I got into content creation, which then led to real estate. Long-winded story, but I moved out to Charlotte after Spokane, after our first 4 years of undergrad, and came out to Charlotte, North Carolina. My now wife and I, we kind of dabbled in the entrepreneurship realm, and we bought our first house right when COVID was happening. So we're still fairly green, fairly fresh. I know you guys have a lot more units than I do, but I'm just trying to be like you guys. So that was how I got my start in real estate. Bought a house, took action.
So your first house was your primary residence, or is that now an investment property for you?
Yeah. So I always had this illusion when I was living in Charlotte. I was like, well, I can't buy because you have to put down 20, even 30%. And growing up, I grew up under, the Dave Ramsey rhetoric where debt is bad. Stay as far away as debt as you can, which is good. Stay far away from debt, But as I started to mature and learn through bigger pockets and just reading books, I was like, oh, that's just one way to buy a house. There's so many different ways. So we ended up saving up and being okay with 10% down. So we were still pretty leveraged, but we found out, okay, you can buy with 10% down. Bought a brand new house in a new construction neighborhood. It was about 85% of the way complete. So we knew, once those lots are done, once that neighborhood is done, it's not like a next-in neighborhood with, thousands of lots. This only had, 30 to 50 lots. Once those last houses are done, that's it. If you want in here, it was a very small community. So we got lucky, bought it, got some equity on the deal. And now, yes, it is a single family. It's a single family rental up on the north side of Lake Murray, outside of Columbia.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that in Dave Ramsey, because I actually heard somebody speaking the other day and they were talking about the difference between debt and debt as leverage. So when you're using debt for real estate, it's totally different than going out and buying the big screen TV on credit card.
Yeah. Yeah, unless it's going into an Airbnb, you know, it's you know what I mean. But yeah, so I grew up thinking debt is no bueno. And then I started to realize, like, okay, it's consumer debt that they're talking about. There's such a thing as really good debt. You know, both of you guys know this. Good debt. It's rarely do you see it, and when you do, you got to grab it and hold on to it.
Yeah, definitely. And so, what kind of projects are you working on nowadays? Like, what realm of real estate are you kind of focused on?
So I have since transformed into a land master or a land geek or collector, whatever you want to call it. I flip land, I develop it, I buy it, sell it. I want to do everything with raw land as possible. I really like the sales side of things. Like, I'm in about a week, I'm going to be selling some tiny home and RV lots down in Florida. And I am so psyched for that, because everybody that buys one of these properties for me, they're like, I've been looking for this product. It just simply does not exist. But the company that I work with to bring it to market and then actually get it to an end user, it's amazing. So I kind of got into that over the last few years, helping service the end user, almost as a wholesaler, if you will, and just helping out with disposition. And I really like the feeling of, you know, when someone steps on a ranch, a 20-acre ranch that they just bought, and they're just, wow, you know, starting to visualize, and we're going to put the barn dominium over here and the mother-in-law suite over here in the pool. Like, I love being a part of that. There's just magic in the air. So I built a business around that entire feeling. That was like, how do I dish that experience out to as many people as possible? How do I solve as many problems as possible at scale? So I met a guy in a mastermind that we're all part of, Sub 2, and he's very integrator focused on systems, processes, KPIs, and I'm very visionary. So he helped me build the back end and the infrastructure to this business, while I kind of led us in the charge of like finding good properties to do projects on. And it's just a beautiful relationship. We both care about each other's families. Never thought business partnerships could work until I found a really solid partner, and we started attacking the same goals together. So land.
Nice. So I've always heard people say the phrase, you should invest in land. They're not making any more of it. But I will tell you, my own personal bias is, if I buy land and it's just land and it doesn't have a money-making aspect to it, is it really that great investment that is real estate? And then what I mean by that is, there's a lot of people who they love investing in real estate for the tax benefits, for all the different things. But the number one thing is high leverage. So you're using a small amount of your own money, if you're using your own money, and then debt pay down by tenants. So if someone came to you with that argument and says, hey, but Marvell, if I was to buy land, if I was to take my 100,000 and buy a piece of land instead of something else, how could I make money off of that? What would you tell them?
Yeah. Good question. So I totally resonate with that. And I remember, you know, from an investor standpoint, is like, I like cash flow. I'm trying to replace the need for, you know, going out and working for monthly income by collecting rent. And, you know, that is just a beautiful wealth builder, the cash flow part. And then you also love the idea of gaining equity, building equity while those people pay your tenants will pay your bill down, your big chunk of good debt. That property is actually increasing in value. And, you know, believe it or not, you can do the same thing with raw land. So I can buy a property, 100 acres. Acre is about a football field. I can buy 100 of them, right? From an old farmer who's just like, you know, I don't have any heirs and I want to enjoy the last 10 or 15 years of my life. And one of the beautiful things about this space is there's less competition. Everyone wants a short-term rental. Everyone wants a tiny home, and they want the glamping thing. They want to be able to get rich quick, right? Well, land is not one of those asset classes. Like, you have to, if you're going to be an investor to win in the space of land, you have to get creative. And in order to find cash flow, you do things like creative financing, where I buy this 100-acre tract and I sell it to you for a little bit more, but I'll be the bank, you know, so you're willing to pay my price if, you know, I'll be the bank and I can give you those monthly payments. So a lot of people are doing that. They're setting up these notes where they're getting monthly income just from a raw piece of land. And then that person will use it for recreation, hunting land, you know, all sorts of stuff. And that helps you sell it quicker, because if I'm going to sell 100 acres and someone's going to go finance it with the bank, they have to get a surveyor. They have to get an appraiser, and they have to do all these things. It's very similar with residential. They have to do all these things in order for the bank to give them the thumbs up to go buy that property. They want to make sure that the leverage is appropriate, right? But if I'm doing owner finance, I can eliminate like that whole process, and we can just move so much quicker, and it's direct to seller. So I like that. I think that that is like, obviously when you do management of notes like that, there's all sorts of issues, as I'm sure both of you are aware. You know, if you have tenants or you deal with short-term rentals, like sometimes people, they don't pay and you have to repossess property. All those headaches can come with land too. But the one thing that I'll never have to deal with if I'm just doing raw land is a leaky toilet, a roof, you know, none of the foundation issues. That stuff just isn't, it's not factors necessarily in raw land. So it's much different. Finding cash flow is a little bit more tricky, but there's 2,500 different ways to skin that cat. And that's just probably the most beginner one.
I love that. Love that answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say a land kind of gives you more of a canvas than individual single family house or something like that. There's only so much you can do with a single family house or land.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, whatever you can dream, you can probably put it together.
Yeah, there's so many more exits. I mean, so we've just talked about like some of the basics, but one time I sold this piece of land down in Texas, and I was walking around the piece of land, and I was just like, this is cool. Right before, you know, I had actually sold it, I found this, which I don't know if camera is focusing on me. Maybe I can hold it up.
Yeah, it's
See that
good.
thing?
A little bit like a bone.
It's a femur. It's a fossil from a tortoise, like a femur bone from a tortoise. You can see the muscle divots or the tendons, like the little tendon divots right there. And so that's just one thing that, like, dinosaur bones, I'm not going to sell this thing, but I could, and it's worth a good bit. So I think I could go back to that property and find, I know the exact tree that it's all hiding under. I would have to get the owner's permission, of course, but I'm sure, knowing the nature of that transaction and the owner, they'd probably be like, yeah, go for it. You can take whatever you find. And that's just one of those things where, like, I've never in my life thought that that would be a potential exit strategy for raw land. I could find a T-Rex fossil, and then, you know, I got my whole piece of property paid for right there.
Yep.
And then some. So there's just so many things. It's a blank canvas. You can literally, the world is your oyster when it comes to raw land. It's a beautiful asset class.
Yeah, I guess the only thing you'd have to worry about that way is if you do find some sort of fossil and your site becomes an archaeological dig. And then
That could be an issue, curveball. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's not all daisies and roses. There's plenty of things that come up every single day as a land investor. And I should also preface with this. I am also buying single family and small multifamily. If I see a good deal and it's got a structure on it, I'll buy it. But a lot of my brain is thinking of, you know, what's the dirt underneath it worth? And that's so much bigger of a factor now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
So what kind of fun projects are you working on right now? Like what's got your passion, you know, going right now as far as things that you're working on?
Yeah, good question. So we talked about 100 acres, right? If I were to sell you 100 acres, when I am listing a piece of property that's that big, I have a very limited buyer pool of people that can actually afford to buy 100 acres. And then the people that can actually, like, muster up the courage to take that project on, because that's a lot of land management. You have to, all of a sudden, tractors and like all these pieces of equipment that you've never owned or never had because you have a single family house come into play. Like, I need to cut roads. I need to, you know, all these different pieces of equipment. Or you just let it sit and use it as hunting land, which is totally fine. But what I'm getting at is your buyer pool is so small when you have a big piece of land. So what I'm actually passionate about doing is finding this big 100-acre tract and cutting it up into like something 5-10 acres, because then I can serve a lot more people. I can help a lot more people become raw landowners. And that's something that my business, we stand on, like, that's the foundation of our business, help as many people as we can become raw landowners. So that usually means shrinking it down to bite-sized chunks. So I got a few of those projects that they're really exciting because, I mean, the numbers are better. They're better than any numbers I've ever seen in short-term rental or house flipping. They're just great returns, and it's like the best kept secret. So I love everything about that realm. that niche of the asset class. So I'm really getting into subdividing development. That's kind of my initial entry to raw land was, I'm a professional photographer by trade. And one of my favorite clients, they were just good to me. They brought me into the family. They were showing me development at the highest level. They do massive subdivides, 1,000 acres cut up into, 10 to 20 acre parcels. They would do RV parks, tiny home resorts, and just these beautiful pieces of real estate where I was just, okay, if we're simplifying this, they're really chunking this thing down to where everyone can win. Everyone can get these bite-sized chunks, and it's in a way to where they can still sell it at a discount in comparison to market value. And they're not going to go under by doing that. By selling it at scale and giving people really good deals, they were also able to, make it financially make sense for the developer. So when I saw that, it's like, man, I need to learn how to do that. And then I need to see where Paul's getting these shirts and get myself some land shirts.
Hard Daddy, $30 online, free shipping. Just get 5 of them. Use my discount code, get me free shirts. Just kidding. But going back to that land, you know what's cool about that is I have friends that they dream of owning 10, 15 acres of property. And in their mind, they really don't think that's ever going to happen. But they're, asking questions and they're looking at it. When you sell these, if you buy a big parcel of land, like, a few hundred acres, and then you chunk these off and you're selling it out and fulfilling those dreams for people. Are you mostly doing that to people who are bringing bank loans in, or they're paying cash, or is what would you say the percentage of seller finance is on those?
Yeah, so that's a good metric to know. Actually, on this last deal that we did towards the end of last year, I think we got 8 lots out of the thing. And we, on each of the listings, we said, will owner finance in all caps. And, we put all that stuff in there because our initial thought was, all right, in order to sell these at this price, which was still a discount, like 80 to 90% of market value, but we wanted them to move quick. So we put will owner finance, assuming that would help incentivize the new buyers to come in and move quickly and take action. And we found 8 buyers. Well, I think 1 or 2 of the buyers ended up picking up a couple lots. We found our buyers in 2 weeks, and not one of them owner finance. So I was very like, all right, that works out. And our plan was, to sell them all on owner finance and then end up selling the notes. So, I see owner financing being more and more of a play now because interest rates are so high. And the thing is, most people who are selling not just land, but houses, cars, whatever, if they're going to owner finance, they're like, well, I want to, match or beat the market. But if you can work it backwards to where you actually do a higher purchase price and a lower interest rate, I think that is going to be a major tool for anyone in real estate in the next couple of years, because I don't see these rates dropping anytime soon. Things will get better and they will get easier for the everyday investor. But I think you can kind of cater to that fear that's in the back of people's minds by offering lower interest rates. So in terms of a percentage, it's kind of hard to say, but I would suggest, if you are thinking about selling, to really push that this year, because you'll sell your stuff a lot quicker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when interest rates are higher, people are looking at down payment and monthly, almost like a car. They don't really look at the sticker price on the car. They're trying to figure out, what can I afford down? What can I afford on a monthly basis? And I think that's what you're seeing in the market. I have a buddy who's building new construction houses, and I was telling him, you can actually buy down the rate for the term of the loan anywhere from like 4 to 6 points. And that's for the full 30 years. And that's what a lot of these new home builders are doing. That's why they're beating the resale market right now, is because they're buying down these rates, and then, it gets sold off in the secondary, a few months down the road. But yeah, they're offering that buy down. So you can up the price a little bit. They're not having to drop the price on the purchase of the house, and they're offering a lower rate. And, I definitely think you're correct on that.
Yeah. And then from the seller finance aspect, one of the things you have to worry about as a seller finance seller is, if I'm planning on making my money on the interest over time, what happens when, rates do come down, maybe in 18, 24, 46 months, whatever, and they refinance me out, right? There's the end of my cash flow. It's done. So I agree with you 100%. Offering that price that is a little bit higher, but working that monthly payment by adjusting that interest rate and also protecting yourself from that refinance, so you can have that long-term benefit from gaining that cash flow. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're priced high and they end up refinancing it, that's a win. Because then, I mean, yes, you lose the cash flow, but then you capitalize. You get all that money, and then you got another problem. Where am I going to place this money, right? Which is a good problem. And I really enjoy having problems like that. But I think that it's something that we can play to. We're playing a psychological game between buyers and sellers and people in between. And when you can offer things that seem like it's on a silver platter, it's ready for you to just right here, take it. I think it truly can be a win-win, because a buyer, they don't have to go get a bank. They can move quickly, and you can sell that note. You can hold on to it. But at the end of the day, those numbers, they make sense. The maths, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that a lot of people don't realize about land, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have way more experience, Marvel, than I do here, but land doesn't hold, I shouldn't say it doesn't hold value as it scales, but you can really get a lot better deal the bigger parcels of land you buy. If you're buying 1 or 2 acres, that's going to comp out to 1 or 2 acre lots that are all over the place. But if you're buying 500 acres, and then your plan is to bring that down to, going through and making a bunch of paper lots and then selling those off, that's where you can really make a lot of money. And you can give them a great deal for their large piece of land, and you can still sell it for a great deal compared to the other sales in the area, but there's still a large spread for you in there too.
Yeah, man. I was looking at a deal that's right between Jason and I, which he's up in Myrtle Beach, and you and I are in Austin. I was looking at a deal that's geographically right in between us, and it was 100 acres. And for every comp that I had, comparable sale at 100 acres, each, like, the price per acre was at about, let's say, $4,500 an acre. So stuff selling for under $500,000 for 100 acre lots. That's simple math. Let's say 4,000 acre, 100 acre lots of about 400 grand is where it was comping out at. But then I go down to, like, let's see, what are the comps for properties between 2 and 5 acres? And that per acre price is up there between 15 and 20,000. So for a 5 acre tract, I'm going to pay $100,000, where this person just, bought 100 acres for 400,000. That kind of goes back to what I was saying. There's bite-sized chunks. And when you get those bite-sized chunks, inevitably, this is across the whole U.S., a smaller property like that is going to have a much higher price per acre, no matter what. That's not like my decision. That's just what the market determines. Absolutely. And I think that if you can swallow that pill and buy the bigger stuff, you have so much more equity on the deal, because once you cut it up into 2 to 5 acre tracts, your price per acre doubles, triples, sometimes it quadruples. So even if, just like you were saying, even if I sell it at a heck of a discount, I give you a really good deal on a 5 acre tract, that's in comparison to other 5 acre tracts. Right. That's not in comparison to a price per acre on a 100 acre tract. So I think it's a safe bet when you play that game, and there's just enough equity. You just sometimes have to force it by cutting the property up into multiple properties. So
absolutely
love it.
So any of these properties, are you doing any horizontal infrastructure, or are you pretty much just teeing them up for paper lots most of the time?
Yeah, in terms of infrastructure, I would, if I'm going to buy cluster lots, I would prefer for there to be a road, there to be culverts, and there to be everything ready for a builder. I either want like shovel ready stuff that's look, it's beautiful, it's sell ready. It just needs some marketing. It needs some, brains behind this to really take this project through to the finish line. Or I want it to be the complete opposite, where it hasn't been touched. Someone hasn't stepped foot on this thing in 20, 30 years. And then I can go in and I have a true blank canvas. We're like, all right, I'm going to put a road over here. I'm going to cut this up, and they're going to come in from this direction. Over here is going to be a little green space, whatever. I don't really want something where someone comes in, they're like, we started it, but we didn't get it across the finish line. So you could put all this over there, but we didn't go and get it done with the county. It just raises a lot of red flags, and I have to follow someone else's project. It's like picking up a flip that someone was halfway done with. They're like, we'll give you a good deal. And you're like, I don't trust that GC. I didn't hire him. I didn't see before the drywall went up. Yeah, so yeah, man, I'm looking at a deal out here in the low country. I really like it. And it's pretty much finished. Like I would feel good about selling either of you a lot in this community.
Nice.
But had it been 2 steps prior, I probably wouldn't touch it because it's hairy until you get the survey and the soils done, which was done just before I stepped onto it. And I don't really like going vertical, like or the horizontal rather. I don't like adding all that risk into it. It's sometimes justified and absolutely necessary, but ideally I would just prepare it for someone to come in and it's their blank canvas. They paint their picture. I don't want someone to have to come in and like play off of my idea of what would be a good property, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the ones were, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had a deal. It was 2 years ago now, actually almost 3 years ago now. And it was cool. Flipping houses is one of the things I love to do. So this house was a house that had a detached garage and it crossed the TMS line, right? So it was technically built on 2 different properties. The cool part was both properties were being sold together. So a 1 acre lot for the house and a 12 acre lot that was sitting right next to it. And the only weirdness was one little corner on the far portion away from the house had a cell tower. So they had to partial out the cell tower. Family keeps that because they wanted the income. And if you don't know, cell towers pay a lot of money to be on somebody's land.
I won't.
Yeah. So we ended up not doing the deal because interest rates shot way up. I had it under contract for $450,000. The house was eventually flipped and sold for $6 million. So I could have broke even on the flip and had this 12 acres for free, which was what my whole goal was, and then go off and do that. But when I was looking at that, part of it was wetland, part of it was flood zone. And what I came across was I didn't know what shovel ready was, right? So like I knew that I wanted to own a subdivision of rentals. And I knew that if I owned the land outright, I could use that as collateral to go off and start doing the construction and get the process going. But I didn't know what shovel ready was. So for the rest of us that out here in the audience or, at home, what is this shovel ready? And what does it mean to take a piece of raw land and turn it into something that's buildable?
Yeah. Great question. So, I mean, shovel ready it should be self-explanatory, but it's not. So basically you want to have a plan that is deeded and approved and recorded by the county. They say these are separate tax map numbers. This is a lot. This is a lot. This is a lot. They have, hundreds or whatever lots. So that's called paper lots. When you get all these lots that have been approved, they're separate tax map numbers. I can go sell each of these individually, not just a plan that an engineer drew up. And then there's some concepts and they're like, okay, now you have to go do that process with the county. That part right there, where you have to go do that process with the county, there's something called NIMBYs. It stands for not in my backyard. And you might not think, people will come out and protest your project, but they do. I've heard nightmare stories about people coming out and like, it drags too much water from the water table or whatever. So that's just with my current lifestyle, there's no chance I'm going to be tied up in that yet. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But to get to paper lots, that right there is a lot of equity to be built without even touching the ground. You're just going and getting these plans approved, right? From there, these plans that you have, in order to get these tax map numbers, you have to go do a road. You have to go get a culvert, and you have to do these things per the county's UDO, which stands for Unified Development Ordinance. There's these rules that you have to follow per every county. Once you get this plan approved, then you have to implement that plan. You go from paper lots to padded lots. Padded lots are essentially you go in, you do the road work, you do everything and get it to where, okay, now it's shovel ready, where you've actually cleared the home sites and you would clear the home sites, build the road, build all the drainage, put in put in all the stuff, the utilities, everything that's going to be in there so that a home builder can come in and just build. Usually this is coming into play when you're entitling something and dishing it off to a production builder, like a DR Hortons, Lennar, Pulte, Mungo, any of those guys. They'll pay you the price to go in and take that risk and go from a concept plan to paper lots to shovel-ready padded lots. There is a big premium, a big spread to be made right there because you're taking on the risk, you're taking on the time, which frankly, a lot of production builders, they just don't have the resources to do. They might have the money, but they don't have the time, or they might have the time, but they don't have the money. It's usually if they find something that's shovel ready, separately deeded and recorded, you've got all the infrastructure in, they can just start building tomorrow. There's a lot of money to be made there. There's an insatiable desire from builders who want shovel ready lots. If you've got any, send them to me. I will help you move them. I know a lot of people just chomping at the bit, ready to get those.
Nice.
So it's a big problem that needs to be solved, and it is getting solved. Inventory is still pumping out, as you guys know, but there's like on this horizon for production builders, they're seeing, okay, there's a shortage. It's coming our way, and it's all coming back to land. So I think that's a space that a lot of people could play in and be really, really successful at in the next few years.
Yeah, I think
so.
A lot of that came about during the 2006 to 2008 collapse. A lot of the big developers, they were actually doing what you were talking about, going through the whole process, entitlements and all that. And when the market shifted, they all of a sudden got stuck with these projects that they couldn't get out of the ground, and they were holding a lot of money tied up in capital. Yeah. And there's a lot of developers that went under during that time period. So I think it kind of shifted to risk off after that. And that's why they look for the shovel ready stuff, or at least they want something that the entitlements are in place. They'll still go do the horizontal infrastructure and all that, but they don't want they don't want a long carrying time or anything for the project. They want to be able to break ground and get it going.
Absolutely. I think they watch their friends get burned, and they're like, yeah, okay, we're gonna do things a little differently from here on out. It's a good play. I mean, think about it. If you have to build 500 homes in the next 2 months, you want as little risk as possible, because you got 500 structures that people are going to live in, and that's on you. So, yeah, I mean, for a lot of reasons, it makes sense to shift that responsibility to kind of like a pre-developer, if you will, someone that will go in and entitle it and get it ready for those guys. There's a lot of money to be made there. So I don't know. Is that something that you guys have any interest in doing? Or do you know anybody that's really doing that full time?
Well, that's one of the things that I was thinking about. Is I talk to a lot of new investors. Like, that's one of my passions, is to help people take those first few steps to get into investing. And, a bunch of different routes. People want to, hey, I'm really interested in multifamily. I want to go out and see if I can put together a little crew and we can grab, a 50 unit or 100 unit, something the big boys aren't really looking for, but it's available out there. We find it for seller financing, or we go together and we find some money and we group it up and we go out and buy it with a loan, whatever that is. Or, a lot of wholesalers, a lot of flippers. But I've never heard anyone ever say, I want to be a shovel ready investor. Never.
Ever.
Yeah, but I think there's a huge opportunity there, because nobody's beating that door down. I think that would be huge if somebody went out and said, hey, let me teach you how to do this. And now you can go off and partner with people who have the capital and resources to pull down this 300-acre property, and you can just be the sweat. You can be the sweat equity in there and put it all together.
Yeah, man. There's so much, like, it's just an abundance to be had in that regard. There's so many people that think that that's just a pipe dream that's way out there, and to a fault, me too. It's like, where would I even start? Just the mastermind that teaches you this has a couple commas. It costs $100,000 to learn this stuff, and it's not obtainable for everybody. But if you really simplify it, which now with things like ChatGPT and OpenAI, which I won't even get into that today, but if you have access to AI, you can really simplify things and kind of bring it back to earth and say, oh, this is actually totally doable. I see how, I only need a loan for $179,000, like whatever it is. It's a lot more obtainable now than ever before. So it's a really exciting time to be in this space and just being able to get plans approved, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's 37 acres right now for sale and cross for like $375,000. Right. And I was like, okay, $375,000 is significant, but it's not unachievable. How great it would be to get involved and just do one just to do it,
Yeah. Send it to me, man. I got a buyer in cross, a strong buyer. I'd love to see if that thing could make sense.
Yeah. I'll shoot it over to you.
Cool. Yeah. I look at all different stuff. Like, I time block from 11 to 1 pretty much every day to just talk to sellers. And a lot of times these are conversations that have been going on for months, because a typical land seller, it's hard to find distress. Like, I'm not finding a seller who's like in foreclosure. I'm not talking to someone who's like, they really need the money sometimes, but usually I'm talking to a sophisticated old man who inherited this property, or a woman. They've lived a lot of life. They've done more laps around the sun than most people I know. And they bought that property, or they inherited it, and they just don't have the energy anymore to keep up with it and to, go mow and go like farm or tend to whatever's out there. So typically I'm talking to people who they almost want to see it passed on in this way where, hey, you can make this more obtainable, because most of these people I'm talking to, they're all American, and they're like, we want to promote home ownership too. We want to promote Americans owning land in America. Ideally, it would be, someone local. They like to see a South Carolina number calling a South Carolinian. There is a lot of contention here in South Carolina about, New Yorkers or Californians coming over and elevating the price per acre. So I think that the heart out there is good to promote this for people, younger people, young families especially. And I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but I think a lot of the sellers are pretty helpful and in alignment with that idea.
Well, to your point, I mean, it sounds like it's a different type of seller than you might be dealing with in another avenue of investing. They understand terms. They understand, that they're not going to get the same price per acre as the person who sold it next to them for 1 acre and they have 100. They understand all those things, and they just have their desires. And so you can make the value system work. It sounds like you got a deal.
Yeah. Well, you think too, a lot of these landowners, they've been sitting on the land for years already, and unless they're farming it or something like that, it's not putting money in their pocket currently. And then you can turn around and put money in their pocket over a period of time. It makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of which, I got one I want you to look at, Jason. I'm going to send it to you after this call. It's in Horry County, a little 10-acre tract that came about today, and I think it would be a good one to kind of see if we can make something happen with it. Awesome. Beautiful property.
I think you went in Florence too. I don't know if you had a chance to take it out or take a look at it yet, but
that's a big pill to swallow. I'm not going to pull it up right now. I'll get distracted. I've been traveling this last week, so you have to bear with me. I got bags under my eyes. My whole body is sore, but it was well worth it.
But it looked like a beautiful trip, man. Mountains and snow. I mean, you can't beat that at all.
Yeah.
Were you in snow out there? I can't remember.
Yeah, so I went up to Kalispell, Whitefish, and I snowboarded with a couple of buddies, and we went to northern Idaho, and then we snowboarded right when I landed, caught the sunset, and then did some night skiing, drove over to Whitefish, snowboarded for a couple days, and then drove back to that same mountain in northern Idaho, snowboarded, and then I caught the first flight out that next morning. So it was just nonstop, go, go, go. But the irony of this, I went across the country, this crazy flight plan to go chase snow. And I got out there and it was cold. There was a lot of snow. But then my wife calls me and she's like, it's dumping snow in South Carolina. And so I almost just turned right around and flew back home. But man,
I don't think any of the mountains around here really got too much of it. Like North Carolina mountains up into Virginia, they didn't. I don't think they really got any snow. So
no, just
you did the right thing.
And from a person who was out there making snow angels, let me tell you, not the snow you would expect. It was much more like, Sonic ice cubes, the little like small ones. It's just miniature version of that. Just a bunch of little ice cubes everywhere.
Oh no!
So it wasn't exactly the powder we wanted. It kinda, when it's icy and it kind of like cuts into your skin as sort of like that.
Man. It was magical. When I landed back in Charleston, I look out the window. I'm like, how when you come into Charleston, you see all those C-17s.
Yeah,
it's like, is that snow? There's like a foot of snow out there, and everyone was like, "We're just as surprised as you." And as soon as I got home, I went and played in the snow with my dog, and we had a blast. So
nice.
It's been raining, so it's disappearing. But I love me some snow for just a couple days out of the year.
Well, this is kind of like around the time where we do a little section of our show. Steven's not with us today, so I'm going to fill in for him. But we call it Deeper Talk with the Sheik. So basically, there's a group of categories. We spin a wheel, and we have this deck. It's called Deeper Talk by Best Self Company.
Okay,
And
nice.
pretty much it's got a couple different categories. We'll pull a card out, and it'll be kind of a random question based on one of those categories. And it just gives us a chance to get to know you a little bit more and have a little bit deeper conversation. So
Yeah, I love it. Let's get into it.
all right, so let's see.
Here we go.
So you're picking from that card pile.
Oh yeah, but just give it a second. It's about to start.
Okay, cool.
All right, so spin the wheel.
Whoa, here we go. The chic wheel.
And
Exposed.
Ooh, good one. A good one.
One of my favorite words. Okay.
Exposed green.
So exposed. What do I do from here?
So exposed. The question is, which friend would you call to help you bury the body and why?
Okay, so that's a good question. I don't want to talk in the past. Which friend would I call hypothetically to get rid of a body? Today, yeah. Because there's some people who they'd be good at it, but they can't keep a secret, and that becomes a problem. Whereas others, they might not be too physically gifted. Okay, so the person that I would call to get rid of a body, and wait, so we're clear, is this a human or an alligator? Because it makes a difference.
It says a friend. So do you have an alligator as a friend?
No, I mean, I'm not burying my body's friend. What kind of body am I burying?
Human body.
So,
oh man.
Yeah. So what friend would you help you cover up? Which one would you call to help you cover up?
I have one brother that I trust enough to do it, but it would require an airplane ride. So let's keep him out of it. I've got a good friend here in the Low Country that he's a little rugged. He does these adventures where they do these reenactments and they go out and do Civil War reenactments. They'll cook over an open fire. He's got the real the stuff that the Confederate troops used to wear back in the day, and he does these things about once or twice a month. I can't say his name for obvious reasons, but he does these things where he does these Civil War reenactments, and he just knows stuff. He's like that guy that knows a little bit about everything. So it'd be him. And if he's watching this, you know who you are.
Nice.
But I can't say his name. I'm sorry.
For the record, I would call Marvel because he has all the names. So I would hope you have plenty of land to dispose of it on. You may be under the toilet phone.
Yeah. Here it'd probably be easier. You just throw it in the river or the lake or something, and a gator would do the rest. But it's kind of a dark question, boys. Can we find one that's a little less?
Yeah, let's do a second.
Yeah, you want to spin again or just pull another exposed one?
Oh, I think we stay exposed.
I trust you.
Stay exposed. Okay. So let's see here. Which historical character could you have been in the past life and why?
Historical character?
Yeah.
Okay. I've actually thought about this. Whose life would I want to go relive? And I think hands down. Hey, sit right there in the guest chair. Sorry, his daughter. She's my assistant. Can you sit there in the guest chair, please? Hands down, Johnny Cash. I've watched that movie, and it's phenomenal. And I really resonated with the life he lived. To be like, I would enjoy that. I've always, you can't see it, but I've got guitars looking at me, and I've always thought, one day I might be a rock star. So it would hands down be Johnny Cash. How about you guys? I'm interested to hear what would yours be?
My character from the past? Do you have one, Paul?
I mean, I have to pick the era. I would probably want to go back to the 20s. I think the 20s would be a really, really cool era. So I would probably pick Al Capone, but I would do it right. I would end up not going to jail for tax evasion.
When you said I would do it right, I thought you meant
funny if you know me, but I'll leave that alone.
Oh man, it's a different podcast. Okay, good choice, man.
On the spot.
Yeah, I think for me, it would probably be going back and probably similar time back in the 20s and 30s. But I think I would want to go back and be Tesla and see what kind of like how his brain worked, or what kind of things he thought of, because he was an innovator, outside the box thinker. So I think that would be interesting to see somebody on that level, a genius, how they actually, like, what kind of things were going on in their head.
Yeah, just being that smart, even if it's
Yeah.
just for a couple of days. I mean, wow, good choice. So now I feel silly with Johnny Cash, but no, I'm sticking to it. I'd love to be Johnny Cash.
I'm with Al Capone, so I'm running liquor. I don't know about you guys.
Cool.
So I think
that was a good
one question that we normally ask people, I don't think we've asked, but if we have, let me know. Is there a recent or in the past project that was just something that really got you excited, like a passion project, and it was just really, really fulfilling to get that done?
Yeah, good question. There's just so many to pick from, right? But I think one of my most exciting deals was like my first land deal that I did all by myself here in South Carolina. Essentially, this came in, we were doing direct mail. So we sent out 1,000 mailers, got 2 responses. These were blind offers where we just selected like 40 to 50% of market price and put our phone number on there. Like, if you're crazy enough to accept this, call me, please, which is great because you get such a lower response rate. But the people that are responding to you, they're willing to accept a massive discounted like price. They're just ready to sell. You got to catch them at the right time, the right place. It only really works when you're sending out thousands of pieces of mail. So we sent out these blind offers, got a couple back, and I got this old lady. She was like 90 something years old. And she was like, listen, I'll sell it to you, but I am like going to hand this off to my son-in-law and let him communicate with you to get it all done. Like, cool. So we came up with a price, and I'm just basically going off this mailer price. I don't know what I'm talking about. I was like, $110,000. Let's do that. She said, okay, whatever, call me. And I'm like, I could have gone lower. Anyways, so I communicate with her son, and I have no idea what I'm doing, man. I was so freaked out. Like, now I got to come up with $110,000 to pay this lady. So I basically, like, I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. I don't know how to wholesale. I don't know how to dispo properties. And I didn't know that I could go to an agent and, list it with the agent and say I don't yet own it or something. So one night I'm out fishing with one of my buddies. When I lived on the lake, we used to go fishing at night. Every night we'd go under the full moon or stars, and we'd fish the green lights. These people light up under their dock, these huge, like 20, 30 yard radius. And you could see these monster bass swimming through, and you could sight fish. So one of my favorite things to do on the Lake Murray. And I'm out there fishing. He's like, let's go pick up our buddy. And all right. So I meet this guy. He comes fishing with us, and I'm just talking about this deal. I'm like, I just locked up, 30 acres out here down the road for $110,000. And I don't really know much about this part of town. And he said, I'll pay you $300,000 for that right now. I was like, what? Seriously? I didn't realize that it was that big of a deal. And, it was late in the night, so we were kind of joking around, but I followed up with him a couple days later, and he's like, yeah, I was serious. I won't pay you $300,000, but I'll pay you a lot for that property, because it sounds like exactly what my family needs. We're looking for a place to store our horses. So long story short, I found out what it was worth, and I sold it to him for about $100,000 less than what it was worth. Like, he could list it on the market and make $100,000 off of me.
Sure.
But we were able to make, a good chunk of change, more than I had ever seen, just handed to me at once. So that to me was like the proof of concept. I was able to really help out this elderly woman. She didn't have to go to market. She couldn't have. She was like old enough and like kind of frail. It would not have worked out for her to like try to go to market with an agent because of the communication. It was really tough. But I was able to help her and her family out. And then turn around, I can help out my buddy, help out his family, his lineage, help them all have land and really increase their net worth. And also, they paid me. So I made money. This lady made money, and the buyer essentially made money on the buy. So that was one of my favorite, like, I'm hooked. It was a light bulb that came on, and that was in Gilbert, South Carolina. So now you know. Gilbert is the pocket. I am looking for land in Gilbert because now I know what it is. Like, I would buy that property.
Does your friend still own that land today?
Heck yeah. They love it. They're always riding ATVs and they got their horses out there and everything. They
So
did
cool.
exactly what I was hoping they would.
Yep.
And that's another angle that a lot of people don't think about. When somebody goes to put land on the market, it doesn't mean it's going to sell right away. I mean, I know I try to buy it every single day, and there's been a for sale sign sitting on it for 10 years,
Yep.
Yeah. Land is definitely like that where it can sit for a long time. But if you market it right, it can move quick. There is a lot of people trying to buy land right now, as I'm sure you guys are both aware.
Yeah. Well, I think breaking it down too obviously helps as well because it makes it more tangible for people, like you said.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
All right. Well, also one of the other questions that we typically ask is like, so with everything that you have going on in the world right now, how do you typically find inspiration for continued personal growth or professional development or growth?
Yeah, what a great question, man. I think we all struggle with this. Like, we get in this chapter of just complacency and just, the mundane doing every day like we did yesterday and the day before. And I think to keep it exciting, to keep it spicy, you've got to go meet people. You got to be around people who are doing big things. And I heard this the other day at church. I know this sounds cliche because I live in the South and I go to church, but I was at church and the pastor was like, yo, you got to get around people, get at the table with people who love you and that care about you, but they're not impressed by what you do. So like you could be bragging about all these things and they're like, all right, cool. Like, we love you and care about you, but it's not that impressive what you're doing. And that really clicked with me. I was like, you know what? Yeah, actually, when I run it back, like some of the best growth moments I've had was when I get around people that truly, I know they care about me, but they're doing such a high level, the very highest level of whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's parenting or, just marriage or podcasting or real estate, whatever it is, to see people that are like at the highest level and you can feel their genuine love and care for you, but they're not like, they're not super impressed by the actions you've taken and the success you've reached. So when you bring that full circle to this community that we're a part of, we're part of a lot of different communities together. But when you go to these events in person and you meet up with people in person and you get that experience where you're around really high level operators, but they're like speaking to you in a way that's not speaking down to you, but a way that's like lifting you up through almost humiliation, if you will, where they're like, okay, that's a cool deal. Add a couple commas to it and then I'll be excited. Oh man, I thought I was doing good. That's the best and worst uncomfortable feeling. I love it because I get around people, I learn, I evolve and grow. But I truly get to deepen those relationships. So when I went out to Montana, there was a couple of guys that I got to link up with. And I just, every day it was that experience. We were getting around people who were doing things at really high levels. And we had a brotherhood out of this. So I think things like Squad Up Summit, all these meetups that we've gone to, everything like that, we get a chance to really strengthen that bond with our community. And in a way to where they push you without ever having to physically like, come on, step it up. But just by their massive, consistent action, it just sparks something inside of you where you're like, I got to go do more and just perform at a higher level. I love that. So I don't know. I hope I answered that question right. I'm sorry I'm long-winded.
No, that was amazing.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that I think that's a great one.
Yeah, it's a community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I feed off the community. I need to be around people. I feed off the energy. I want to hear about what other people are working on and how they're growing on a personal level, what they're doing to develop themselves, what kind of books they're reading, who are their coaches, things like that. Because if I would have had that mindset, 20 years ago, my life would probably be totally different than now. And it's like now I'm like looking for the next thing I look inward, you're constantly looking inward in order to find the next thing to work on and develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think about like everything that we do today, we're doing things that our future self will turn around and be like, I'm really thankful that, I did that the older past version of me did that. Because we're constantly evolving, man. We're always becoming a new version of ourselves. And just constantly rewarding our future self whether it's like, I'm going to, drink a gallon of water, I'm going to do a bunch of push-ups, I'm going to go to bed at 9 p.m., whatever it is. I mean, it's just this constant state of trying to make yourself uncomfortable for the sake of your future selves, like little hits of leisure and, I don't think adrenaline is the word, but little moments of gratitude for your previous self. That's something I live by. So
I love that.
That's awesome, man. Well, we don't want to take up too much more of your time, Austin. If people want to find out more about what you're doing or get a hold of you for any reason, what's the best way to reach out and make contact with you nowadays?
Yeah. So I appreciate that, by the way. Since we've been on this call, like I only have 3 kids, but it feels like 400 sometimes. They've all come in and they're like, Dad, dinner, Dad, paper airplanes, Dad, we finished a puzzle, whatever. They're just constantly coming in and so I appreciate you letting me go. But if someone wants to reach out to me, I've got this awesome free Facebook group. It's private, but it's called the Land League. And I just want that to be a resource for anyone that's like, I want to learn about land. I want to learn about this side of investing, because there's a lot of things that are kind of held to the chest. Like developers don't have time, like single family flippers and resident developers are so swamped with the biggest, most important stuff, where if they're not like traveling the world and enjoying life, they are seriously operating their business. So there's not a whole lot of time to educate. There's not a lot of resources for education in the space of land. They're out there. There's podcasts. If you look, you'll find them. But I made this Facebook page, the Land League, to really try to bring as much value to people as possible, so that if they want to learn before they take that step and actually buy a piece of property, they can. So the Land League, and then obviously you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. You can probably Google me and find me. I'm all over the place.
For Instagram and Facebook, is that just Austin Marvell?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Austin Marvells, and that it was supposed to be like a play on words. Like I'm out there marveling at things. I don't know. Nobody ever knows. I always tell people, they're like, that's stupid. Like, all right, whatever. Yeah, it's Austin Marvells, only because Austin Marvell was taken. So look up Austin Marvells on Instagram, and then Facebook, same thing. You can find me, Austin Marvell.
Love it.
So,
well, I'm going to be looking for. From now on, I'll call you Austin Captain Carolina Marvel. That's okay. I'm going to remember that forever.
Isn't the new Captain America getting ready to come out?
It is.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'd like to do a deal with you guys. I know we've talked about that before, and you guys are both realtors here in the area, so you can help me with things that, like you have resources that I don't have. So love to talk about doing a deal, put something together. And even if it's as simple as like buying a really cool property here in Charleston or outside of Myrtle Beach, I'd be game for that too. Just make sure it has some good property underneath it, some good land.
Well, Jason and I have a project that we talked about the other day. I think this might be right up your wheelhouse. So after this, we can circle up.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I know you sent me one. If that's the one, I'm diving deep into this. Some of these deals, some of these land development deals, I've seen them take like 36 months because they get hung up in that process of getting through the paper lot process. And then, that makes it like a lot of times when I'm talking to sellers, if they're interested in like potentially doing the entitlement play where we lock up the content, I mean, that could take 36 hours of just looking at a screen, running through Excel sheets, comp and stuff. Like I don't like doing all that without a serious LOI or a contract in place. As I'm sure you guys know, I can only imagine being a realtor right now and someone calls you up and they're like, hey, I want to go see this property. And you're like, okay. Do you even understand? Like, this is how I put bread in my basket, food on my table.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. It's a little bit more complex than that. So yeah, I applaud the work you guys are doing.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time, man. Look forward to speaking with you and doing some deals, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Actually, there's a meetup this weekend in Charleston, right, Paul?
That's right. We have one over at the family restaurant. We're doing that one. And then we actually have a pop-up tomorrow. So if you haven't seen that, pop-up tomorrow down at El Molino. So Taco Tuesday, 6 p.m.
Where's that? Send me that. I want to go to Taco Tuesday.
Yep, 5900 Rivers Avenue. I'll shoot it to you after this.
Yeah, shoot it to me. I'll go get some tacos. Taco Tuesday sounds fun.
Nice.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Austin. Have a great night, brother.
You too.